Hello, LinkedIn community. Welcome to the very last episode of the Summer of Platform Organizations webinar series. I'm extremely excited to have all of you here and create a platform for open discussions on the future of organizing. I'm Shruthi Prakash, your co host for this discussion, and I'm thrilled to have Emmanuel with us. Sorry, there was an echo from my side. I'm really sorry. Yeah, so I'm very thrilled to have Emmanuel join us, and he's the equity partner and entrepreneurial ecosystem enabling organization micro enterprise lead at Boundless. He comes with extensive experience in planning and implementing platform strategies across multiple industries and organizations from around the world. Today, he'll be facilitating this webinar for us. In the previous episode, we covered the topics of leadership in entrepreneurial and ecosystemic platform organizations. And today, we're here to talk about effective team dynamics to support platform organization strategies. Among us, we have a panel of some industry veterans who have been kind enough to join us right at the end of the week. So, thank you, firstly. Today we have Mike Leber, who's the leadership and business agility coach at Agile Experts, and Hedy Bukner, who's the transformation coach, organizational psychologist, and partner at Improv GmbH. As most of you know, at Boundaryless, we create open source frameworks and knowledge pools for platform design and entrepreneurial organization development. And we support a global community of organizations, institutions, and individuals through our programs. Before we start, I would also like to nudge all our listeners to keep the session interactive. Please drop in your questions, comments, feedbacks, and thoughts in the comments section, and we'll be happy to take it up along with our guests as well. I would also like to inform all our listeners that we have an online session that's a 16-hour training workshop on the Hires organizational model, which is called Rendon High. It's conducted in partnership with the Hire Model of Research Institute, and more details of this will be shared towards the end. So do stick on with us. And now, without any further ado, I will pass it on to Emmanuel to take it over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rudy, and welcome also from my side to Mike and Hedy for being here. I had the chance to collaborate with both of them in the past years, and I invited them because of their expertise in, let's say, progressive and very effective team dynamics. The topic for today is looking at a different kind of organization, an organization that we call the platform organization, that in a nutshell is looking at multiple products, very often multiple business models in different markets with different market segments and facing an external environment that is very dynamic, in flux, unpredictable, if you want, even difficult to influence. So the question that we are going to tackle with today is if there is any implication of this environment and this kind of organization when we look at the teams within the organization. For example, in terms of flexibility, in terms of decentralization, so decentralized, diffused decision making, in terms of adaptability, in terms of collaboration. So my first question for Hedy and then for Mike is what are the key roles in a team that is part of a platform organization that you foresee? Is there any specific responsibility that an effective team should have when we look at platform organization? So when we look again at multiple products, multiple, let's say, things, very different things, sometimes competing things that the organization should look after. Hedy, let's start from you, and welcome.
Yeah, hi, Emanuele, and thanks again for the invitation. Um, we haven't spoken in a while, so I'm very happy to be here and to have this chat with you guys this afternoon. Yeah, you're asking about roles, and you already mentioned the highly dynamic market situation that platform companies act in and are confronted with and have to react to. And my background is with agile development, and I guess what we see and what has proven very successful is the division of leadership activities and leadership duties and responsibilities between mainly a business owner. We like, if you have a look at the agile methods, you most of the time read about product owners, but it really is about the business. So it's about what needs to be done, and then you have the role of a facilitator. There is an agile coach, for example, but you can name it facilitator, whose responsibility and duty really are to make an effective team and to foster learning within the team, adaptation, continuous improvement. And then you have the development team, which usually is a cross-functional team. And I think that's a very important aspect to the whole topic.
Thanks so much. Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, that's an interesting kickoff. I think there are two interesting trade-offs that we learned about in the past few years in the agile world regarding roles, which was, on the one side, product owner, Hedy mentioned it, how it differs from product manager. And there is a little bit of a difference in terms of, you look into organizations in Silicon Valley, they would rarely talk about product owners, but they see a broader responsibility for somebody who's really foreseeing or overlooking the whole business. And actually, looking at platform organizations, there is obviously a bigger responsibility compared to most larger organizations. Pretty often, large organizations applying Agile have a rather inward looking focus and priority because they are part of a bigger game. The platform organization basically takes over responsibility directly. So that exposes them more to the market, and that emphasizes the product owner or finally product manager role maybe a little bit more. The second one, and that might be interesting too, is the interaction part, internally as well as externally. Because talking platform, as you mentioned, Emanuele, there might be a lot of competing or also collaborating partners within the platform ecosystem. And taking a role or a specific, how can I say, effort to maintain this is one aspect, but also looking outwards towards the organization. There is this famous principle, zero distance to customers. And you might have thousands of customers, turning them into users. How would you engage with those? So sometimes it makes a lot of sense to come up with a sort of community engagement role that basically makes sure that, first of all, people are understanding what customers are all about, that you have a possibility to derive data from there, and yeah, finally connect the dots between the market and teams.
I really wanted to touch on your last point. So, who is in charge of guaranteeing this exchange, communication, or even more co-creation between the team and the market and the users, the customers, the patients, depending on the topic? How is that happening? Because if we really want to innovate, if we really want to thrive on fluid market, that's a core capability. Hedy, if you have ideas, of course.
For me, I would like to to focus on the data-driven part that Mike said, because considering that you can't just, like, you don't have the one customer that's representative, I guess it's really key to have a good database that you can use to make your decisions. And like it's for me, it's the business owner, the product manager's responsibility to come to a decision and to come to priority list. But that doesn't mean that he or she is the only person to take the decision. So what we often see is that within this cross-functional team, you need more than only one perspective and one interpretation of data to come up with really great solutions and innovative solutions.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, I can only back what Hedy just said. I think in a platform organization, you've got an entrepreneur. There is this idea of entrepreneur, which is a totally different thing than being a manager. And we could compare it more to a startup than to a large organization. If you're an entrepreneur, you cannot, you cannot delegate your accountability for the venture. But of course, there is a shared responsibility because you don't want to micromanage a highly dynamic, creative team that is supposed to work as close as possible to customers. So finally, it's a balance between accountability and responsibilities. And yeah, that's how I see it. And I think that was what Hedy mentioned with more or less what we know from the Agile world is self-organization, right? And pretty much matches the product owner and self-organized team roles.
Thanks. You touched upon another couple of topics that I wanted to address. The first one is really decision making. Are these teams really looking like a boss and then subordinates or something else? How are decisions taken? Is the product owner, business owner, the one calling the shots? Who wants to jump in?
Well, Hedy, do you want to?
Go ahead. I'll
Yeah.
add.
I mean, I would say again, there is, first of all, it's always helpful for decision-making processes, and that's actually the point. We want to talk about clear processes, to have clear accountabilities and roles. So breaking it down on team, who is taking care for what. But in the end, again, complex environment, innovative environment, we want to see shared perspectives. We want to see, who else has a perspective to add to a decision. So it's not about, one guy takes all, and it's not about win, lose. It's not about I make the decisions and you're just supposed to support it. It's really about setting up a decision framework. And finally, Hedy mentioned already data. I think a lot what we see in platform organizations builds up on data platforms. So we not only want to make gut based, decisions, based upon opinions primarily, but we want to use as much as possible evidence-based, data-based decisions.
Hedy, you want to add?
Yeah, so it's about decision making in teams and who is. I mean, if it's about your leadership style, really, because we're still talking about these complex environments, and most of the time we don't have the knowledge what's the right decision. So maybe one approach that often helps, I mean, it's something that you need to practice as well, is to break the topics that you need to decide on down as well and make them smaller, make them less painful if you get them wrong. So create an environment, a safe environment for your team to be able to fail and learn from that failure, because you hopefully have data that you can base your decision up on, but then the market might still react differently. And if you make small decisions, then they need to be survivable.
Isn't there a risk of not moving quick enough due to searching for consensus in a team? So at the end, we are all peers. The environment is uncertain. There is no single right thing. Maybe risk of not acting, of not moving, just staying there and thinking about the possibilities without taking any direction. Who has the responsibility for it, or is the team having the responsibility for it?
It reminds me a little bit on these frameworks we know from holacracy and things alike, where there's pretty straight decision or differentiation. who even needs to be asked, right? So I think that is a good one, that we don't get lost in endless discussions. So obviously it's helpful to understand which situations deserve what kind of, you know, um, conversations, and finally involving which people. So that's the first differentiator, which helps not to waste time, because as we know, and you might have seen Elon Musk, I'm not happy to talk a lot about Elon Musk these days, but still his ideas are pretty cool. When he talks about meetings, it's more about, okay, if you can't contribute, don't join a meeting, right? Meeting is not just, like one guy telling and the others just listening. Listening in general is an important one when it comes to difficult situations where we don't know what could be the possible consequences. So I think consequences are an important factor to distinguish between, can I decide it immediately based upon my defined accountability? So have accountabilities defined clearly, and maybe have a decision framework in place, like delegation levels established for key decision areas. That's what we sometimes in the agile world play with delegation poker and stuff like that. And then understand for more complex topics and decisions, and that's to your point, Emanuele, take your time, because I think there is this saying, if you want to go long, you should slow down. So it's not about, speeding up everything on a day by day basis, but understanding what needs decisions now, what's the impact, what's the cost of delay for some things, and where do we want to dig deeper.
Great.
I actually think that's a very interesting and very important point that you just made. The long-term thinking, and in our rapid world, what we like. I've been engaging with sustainability a lot lately, and how it affects strategies, how it also affects decision making, and I think a skill that we really lost in the last years and decades is using the power of long-term thinking, and also add it into your daily decision making, because in the end, anything we do has consequences on our surroundings, on the markets, but also on the people that actually form the markets. And so I think it's an important skill that we should reactivate to put into our decision-making processes, to also allow long-term thinking.
But what I'm hearing within between the lines is a bit of a really flat peer-to-peer team, right? So not the business owner, product owner, say, to take more skin in the game and responsibility, but really the team finding a framework, and there might be different options. Mike was suggesting some to decide together, whether that's long term or if that's short term. Is this what you are seeing in the market? So do you see many agile teams in which there is no manager, there is nobody representing the team outside the team, or do you see, more of a manager in the agile style approach?
Well, I think, traditional organizations, that might be the helpful differentiator. They usually support careers in a more hierarchical way. And if we talk about managers, risky decisions are a potential danger for a career. I mean, always. That's even if you're a CEO, you're permanent, confronted with a lot of difficult decisions, and they can really hit you, obviously. But obviously, there is a risk, kind of risk avoidance in many traditional organizations that slows down, in my experience, a lot of things. So that's why I love to compare, and most people know this picture still, agile teams a lot, not in every organization. It depends on what Hedy just said before in the beginning, on the leadership culture. But I love to compare many of them with Ferraris, which are just, without tires in the garage, but they're loud, but they don't move a millimeter.
That's not a very happy picture. So,
Yeah,
uh,
especially not for an Italian, right?
yeah, exactly. Loving cars. So, what are we missing to make those Ferraris run fast? Is it something within the team or something beyond the team, something outside? Why is the Ferrari missing the tires?
Yeah, I think Hedy already mentioned it today with psychological safety as a key word. It's a
Hmm.
cultural thingy, and not a local culture thing like team culture. It's obviously could be departmental culture, but rather organizational culture. So if you would look at a company like, I'm just mentioning one large one, not to run into any troubles with anyone personally, but Siemens is so large that it's nearly a world on its own, that you have so many things. They obviously, and that's a story of the past 15 years. They have troubles to invent something and then put it out on the market, because finally there is some organizational, traditional risk avoiding concept holding it back. And that might again be more of a systemic issue. It's not about pointing finger at anyone. It's more like, because things are like they are, and organizational parts, units, roles, legal obligations, and finally managers, it all goes together so that they're not able to take a decision today, but unfortunately not tomorrow, and not this month, maybe not this year. And so if you want to change that, you can't change that on a team level.
Okay, that's a good point. So basically, we are saying the team is missing the freedom or autonomy or power to, for example, create new products or take big decisions. Is that Hedy? Also,
Yeah.
yeah, or
Hedy, maybe you want to go?
Yes, in big organizations, definitely, because there are so many processes and regulatory um, guidelines in place that it's really hard for them to actually take their own decisions. Um, I, yeah, that's what I'm seeing as well. That's just
sorry to
about.
interrupt. One point that we are bringing home is that in addition to the right dynamics, the team should have the right degree of autonomy to be a Ferrari, not a Ferrari in a garage, but a Ferrari, let's say, on the street. I think that's already an interesting aspect. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So maybe one other thing, but that only applies to organizations that have been around for a couple of years. It's the technological skills that the team needs as well, because if you don't have the right tools and infrastructure in place to be actually able as a team to deliver frequently and small packages of software, then you rise the risk of doing the wrong thing. And I mean, one of the core principles that we use and that we rely on is small and short and fast feedback loops via data, via feedback on all levels the team interacts with, also on the software development level, but also on the market level.
Great, thanks for the point. Mike, anything to add?
Yeah. Again, it brings me back to the career point, and that also counts for teams. If you always have to fear to be punished if you make a mistake, because you might be granted as a team to go ahead. Now you're an agile team, you've got a product owner. Hey guys, go ahead. Here's 1 million bugs and you will be successful. But what if not? Very often likelihood is lower than 50%, and especially in an innovative area. We shouldn't underestimate the potential for learning. which is often taken in traditional organization as failure. So also so for number one, I think it's about the backing. It's about, what are we agreeing upon? What are the principles for collaboration, for enabling such teams? And that comes from, I think, the very top. We talk about empowerment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is the framing. What are we trying to achieve here? Is it just executing a job and then, have a fixed ROI? Well, I think fixed interest rates are even over at traditional banks if you want to put your money there, right? And this then also needs to shift in thinking in traditional organizations, rather in a way that we need to run, we sometimes call it an innovation portfolio. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about to throw out 1 billion euros at once for one project and team. I mean, they will take it and will be happy, but it's more like, iterative investment based upon learning and having a portfolio. And if one thing fails, great, we've got a learning point, but we don't want to punish anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely, I agree. Failure is a quite subtle, or psychological safety are hot topics, but not so, I think,
Easy
developed
to
or
talk about.
diffused. Yeah, and this is so easy to talk about, but not really implemented much. Hedy, is there anything you want to add on this?
Well, we the two of us, we met in one of your higher trainings the first time, and I mean that's one of the most regarded examples of how you create structures in an organizational culture to actually allow autonomous decision making by these micro enterprises. I mean, you probably are the better expert on that topic, but I really like the example of a company that allows and really gives the power to make decisions into these teams or micro enterprises, whatever you might want to call them.
I think one interesting area is budgeting, and I think this is interesting also in the agile space, because you often have multiple levels. One level is the operational aspects, the other one is uh, PI planning, budgeting. Do you think that budgeting and innovation should be more in the team, or more at the portfolio level, as Mike was describing, on top and then outside of the team? So, to say that in another way, should the team be responsible to decide which product or which direction to pursue, or should somebody else take care of it? Mike.
Well, budgeting also has in the meanwhile, interesting foot in the agile arena when we talk about beyond budgeting. Hedy Bukner is one of the promoters since, I know him since probably 10 years, where he actually tries to convince organizations that you can't try to run a fast development process for your products and then have a yearly planning process for the funding part. So obviously you need to also reframe your budgeting, which is more about like a forecast, but not a fixed decision. I mean, September is usually the time when most large organizations fix a budget for 25, right? But not only for the first quarter. And they want to fix it and they want to have everything, in detail broken down, as you just said, from top level to departmental area, business area, whatever product level. So I think we need to break free also here. And beyond budgeting is just an example where many organizations like even banks who are in the most regulated industries are able to break free from this fixed idea of a yearly budget. I think that is a first ingredient. And then to understand that, again, we already mentioned it, data driven, hypothesis driven, we need to move a product idea further. There is the first thing, like having a first idea of what could success look like, an ROI, everything, right? But then not, expect this will immediately pay off, but rather have a iterative funding process. I think that's my first take for this. conversation.
Thanks. I think we are going towards really micro enterprises, so in building an environment of innovation. Eddie.
Yeah, in my experience, it's a skill that most of the teams don't have
Mm,
to actually control their own budget. But how could they if they have never learned about it? So I guess one of the first steps must be to educate them about how budgeting works. And I think, well, in any case, if you have a startup, you need some kind of budget to start with in the first place, because otherwise it's really hard. And within a company, within a large company, this wouldn't happen. But again, I totally agree with Mike that fixing the budget today for December 2025 probably doesn't solve the problem and doesn't allow companies and teams to actually act fast and also apply their learning. I think that's because that's the most crucial part. If they don't have the freedom to learn and to apply what they learned by the feedback that they got from the market, then it's a shame. And
very
it's
sad.
definitely yeah.
Hedy, would you allow if I slightly challenge what you said before, and you will probably recognize a similar thing? Like, well, of course, we first of all should enable people to learn about. Hey, they were never doing this budgeting process, so let them learn. Right, number one, so support them. But number two, maybe sometimes we just underestimate what people are able to do. We have this when we talk about self-organized teams, as you know, right, in the agile space. They are not used to self-organize, but only in this organization. When they enter the building in the morning, they are used to, you know put their responsibility at the entry desk and do what they're being told to.
Mm,
But many of them might, I don't know, run a football club at home or have built a house with their families, which took them, getting a credit from the bank, and they need to do some calculation. So, to me, as a consequence, this sometimes means like maybe we should treat people more like adults. So it's about attitude, brings us back to the leadership culture and everything. And number two, maybe we should, rethink our processes. So every team might be able to do the calculation of a budget, which is needed for a normal product development. But just this super complicated process, which is usually going through, I don't know, 5 hierarchies and 4 quarters and rolling whatever budget and, complicated accounting rules, that might be overwhelming. But guess what? It's not really helping the product to succeed anyway. Just to challenge this a little bit, like the status quo is sometimes maybe not what we should stick to.
Um, Yeah, on the other hand, my experience is that running a company is different from building a house, like in terms of financial aspects. So I think it's an extra skill that you needed to add to the team.
Yeah,
And then
that's okay
again,
too.
depends on whether you see governance or controlling as a shared service that you offer to your autonomous teams, or you put it into every team. I rather opt for the shared service.
And I think
Perspective,
that's a,
a
yeah,
very special skill set that you need, and it's a huge thing that you
yeah.
can really, if you like, if you're an expert in a different area, it's an own profession, and I think it's a yeah.
And I mean, I'm speaking from this area because I learned accounting at university gratefully, but
Oh
I
no,
totally,
I
I, I
didn't.
told, I totally agree. No, no, no worries. I won't join any team now and
I won't
bothering
give up.
them. But what you just brought up is an important one. Shared service, which brings us now to the language of platforms again, right? That would allow the team, because we talked about decisions before, even to decide, all right, will we take the internal one A or B or C? Maybe we hire somebody else who's done a good job last year. So what we have here is, again, I think the the afterthought that it's not the managers anymore who give a green light on level 1, level 2, level 3, maybe level 4, but basically we can even empower a team to be entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
Within boundaries.
Yeah, I think we are pointing to, I don't know if we want to call it micro enterprise, it doesn't matter, but I think we are pointing to a direction in which it may be more complex for teams to take on that space, take on that freedom, because they have to cover roles they never really looked after, whether that's a manager, it's a controller. I think this goes beyond team dynamics and looks a bit more to the market, to the product. Um, I have one question, then I will let Shruti ask a couple of questions. Adi, you were pointing to the skills that teams don't have. Is there anything else that the two of you would like to see in teams that today are not so diffused, maybe not even considered interesting, but that are functional to a platform organization? So, what is missing in our teams today? What should we have in terms of roles, in terms of skills, capabilities? Who wants to start? Eddie, I will start from you since
Yeah,
you started
yeah.
from
I
mentioning
start.
skills.
So, well, as platform organizations are rather new, I think probably they don't have. And I'm working with often with more traditional companies as well. So I refer to these more traditional companies that once trying and starting a transformation towards a more platform oriented company, what they tend to miss and to lack is the or what we often work on is the bringing in the idea of DevOps. That is linking development team and operation, integrating it into the team. And another skill that I think is absolutely necessary for platform teams is user experience, because it needs to be self-explanatory, and that sometimes is a challenge for more traditional companies.
And it is already, I think, inverting the perspective, because looking at usability or user centricity means you're putting yourself in the shoes of others, right? And that's not the typical developer's mindset. I'm a computer scientist, so for some time, let's say, I've been on the other side, and probably I can relate. But that's already a shift, mindset shift, I think,
Mm.
in teams. Mike, what else?
Well, I would say it's so super dependent upon context that I wouldn't dare to generalize. If you, for example, would look at a team at Google in Mountain View, I mean, you might not miss a lot of things because they're ahead of most technologies and they're just doing this stuff. They're basically inventing machine learning, they're inventing AI and all we have, right? And I think when we look at a traditional team, Amazon has this working backwards method for developing products. And I think that could be also a helpful way to look at a team, the capability of a team, to understand, all right, we're exposing ourselves 100% to the market. There is no 50%, there is no 60%. We're taking ownership, right? So if we put ourselves into this driver's seat as a team, not as an individual,
Mhm.
what are we actually already covering? What are we halfway covering? And what is not there at all? This typical kind of assessment. And, in the agile world, these team development matrices became pretty well known. Just to understand, okay, learning and growing is a locally definable path. And again, if we would then see traditional organizations, I mentioned machine learning. Machine learning, big data is certainly in the platform arena something you would not see a lot in most teams. You will, again, like with the accounting thing, need a shared service. And I doubt that even in traditional organizations, you find a lot of shared services who are capable of that, right? So
Mhm.
that might be one thing. And the whole user exposure is probably in most teams lacking. As you just said, technical people are super happy to meet technical people, but users, and I'm not even talking customers, users, no, please not. Keep them away. Don't let them into our building, right? And so that brings me to the last point. It's social skills.
Mm.
And we talk a lot about teamwork and team play, but actually on the ground, I still see when the rubber hits the road, as we say, see the actual skill rarely in place. And that basically means talking and listening to people who might not be of the same opinion, and we mentioned it already before, then potentially making collaborative decisions.
Thanks. Very stimulating. Shruti, I think you have some questions,
Yes.
right?
Yes, I've been listening, and I mean, it's super interesting, right? So, my question sort of stem from the whole budgeting sort of conversation, right? Like, budget as a, let's say, quantifiable metric is assessed based on maybe what, let's say, sales comes out of it. Like, its extraction of value depends on how much sales comes. And for me, when we think about platforms and value creation, essentially, there are so many other, let's say, metrics that are important, like maybe network effects or how the ecosystem is growing and sort of self nurturing and so on, right? So do you think there are any other metrics or KPIs that needs to be constructed to sort of effectively evaluate a team? And I think you all sort of touched upon this, like for example, you just mentioned on maybe team development, team contribution, and so on. But is there anything that sort of sustains for the long run from a platform point of view? And how do you all think it's going to shape up even further? Maybe Hedy, you can.
I pass on to Mike this question.
Yeah, so yeah, and
Because
it's a
it's too
pretty
easy,
tough.
right?
Yeah,
It's so easy.
and it's a pretty tough question, and in order not to throw at just a bunch of possible metrics, because I think that's the point here. To first of all, not just measure everything you can, but first of all, find metrics that help you discover health. I love to point to the term health, whether it's about team health, product health, and understanding that we have a sort of strategy. And this is also about strategy that's not coming only from the top, but actually a product strategy targeting the market, that is somehow valid, helpful. It depends on the life cycle of the product, obviously, very much. We just mentioned sales. But hey, if we just are about to innovate a product based upon totally innovative technology, and I'm just using AI now for whatever reason, for whatever, use case, hardly his sales could come up with more than just number guessing. And especially in the beginning of a product, first initial life cycles, it's obviously not about sales, right? Look at companies like Spotify. They are in the business only built upon a hypothesis of value, and a value might be a way more important factor to understand what is actually valuable to whom, what problems are we solving for whom, what is our strategic position, technology, and everything alike. So I would think about, setting up a radar covering the different dimensions, number one, in order to find balance. I think that is important, not to optimize in only one direction. And number two, keep it again, small, keep it lightweight. So don't go into the direction of measuring everything you can, and then what kind of decisions will that help for?
Right. I think where I was coming from as well is that there are so many sort of shorter term metrics that are often associated with platforms, maybe like fast customer acquisition or maybe transaction volume and so on, right? Usually those are like your quick, easy bets in terms of assessing how a platform is performing. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to know. So, one of the comments that we got was also on the fact that transparency plays as a extra skill that maybe teams can have, organizations can have. And I think we touched a bit before on how, let's say, psychological safety and so on sort of builds a important aspect of a team, right? So how do you all think it's sort of going to change from when a team is hierarchical in its sense to more and more maybe decentralized or distributed?
Sorry, can you repeat the skill
No,
that you
so
mentioned?
trust, or how do you increase trust and transparency in the system when teams are sort of shifting from a unidirectional hierarchical flow of value or sort of leadership to a distributed or decentralized team? Yeah.
Mm. Maybe I can connect it to to the question before, because I mean you can measure data to get KPIs for the platform success, but then you can also get data for the teams to actually have an indication on how well they're doing. And I think this is one of the steps that you can do to on the way from a hierarchical organization to a self-organizing organization, that you provide the team with data that they can use in order to improve themselves and to improve their performance without being measured from the outside, but by the data that they gather in order to self-assess where they are and how they can become better. And in the end, trust is always bidirectional. So if you have a traditional hierarchical organization and a manager that needs to let go of, for example, taking certain decisions, then you also need a team that is willing to take these decisions. So for me, it's always working with both parties, with the team on the one hand side and with the manager or the leader on the other side, and to establish a trusting relationship between the two of them. Transparency helps a lot if you use it for building trust and not for controlling. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes a difference if you're, part of a platform team. It's like you signed up for it. When I'm part of a traditional organization, I'm assigned a team. So signing up for a team and a product and basically committing, hey, I want to be part of this. You will actively seek for agreements. You will actively, craft principles across the team and work on it. We know from the agile world that very often we meet traditional teams who might even not fulfill the team definition. They're just a group. They're just, sitting in a similar room or share a similar org chart piece, but they never see each other. And then we have to literally invite them. Some people might say force them, or they feel forced to form team agreements because they never did that before. But now they have it. Will they follow up? Well, I would say 50% might. But if I'm on a platform team, I took a decision in my career to spend the next 2, 3 years at least on this team, or maybe 1 year, whatever. And that's a totally different thing if I want something up front. And then what Hedy just said, I would not call it a skill, what you said, transparency. It's more like a capability or attribute of a system that needs to fulfill certain aspects, transparency being one of them. And I would say, we sometimes say radical transparency. That doesn't just mean like a few things, but what we said before, hey, the financials, the numbers, the market, the customer feedback, whatever is decided about and around our product.
I have a couple of follow-up questions. So the first one is, do you really see many teams, agile teams, for example, desiring more space, more risk, more upsides and returns? or at the end they are happy as they are. So they're happy in having their own space, but without too much risk. They would like to still have some direction from above, to look more for technical aspects than all the other complexities and responsibilities we discussed. Just to maybe to get my question complete, I had the chance to interact with both of you in an agile space, let's say an agile world, and I was surprised about the sincere interest many agile teams had regarding the REN&A, regarding migrant enterprises, because this is my understanding at least. They have seen in it a possibility to do more, to get more. But is this prevalent, or is this only for a few? Heidi.
We live in a very colorful world.
Okay.
So I don't know whether you can generalize it, but like the teams and organizations I work with, it really motivates people.
Mm.
Like to be able to contribute, to be able to bring platforms, products, your part of work forward and to improve it is a big, big motivator to a lot of people. And I mean, we're all working in the knowledge area, and most of the people are very well educated. They I don't know, they have a lot of skills, and yes, they do enjoy it. And but also it's a process, because it's always both. I mean, it's an individual development, it's also an organizational development, because most of the time it's not only the team that needs transformation, but also leaders, managers, structures need to be adjusted. We are talking about organizational development, and I get the impression that people that are allowed to um, stand up and voice their ideas, they are very motivated, and they are willing to also take a risk if they know
Great.
that they are not getting fired for
Of
the wrong
course,
decision.
within a safe net
Yes, yes.
that gives hope. Mike.
Yeah, I would agree. It's nearly impossible to generalize, probably. Maybe to add a little bit of a cynical view, what is an agile team? If you
Mm-hmm.
name it agile, and I can imagine that many people nowadays are happy to work in any team as long there is no attribute called agile. That again, that depends maybe on the context, but I've seen many contexts where there is this agile industrial complex, which many people know. And I think agile in 25 years now went through an evolution where we are currently probably at the end of frameworks, processes, and tools, which was not the original idea anyway. Um, and in these circumstances, you recognize they name teams like here's a Kanban team, here's a Scrum team. I mean, that alone gives you already an idea, oh, there's something going wrong, because a team is not about a framework. And so I would agree what Hedy said. It's about what we're supposed to do here. And if we're able to openly speak up, which should be a natural thing in 24 for any team and any individual, then I think this is positive. But, and probably that's the final point here, a lot of organizations who've gone through these kind of forced changes, and I would say this is the same danger for the platform thing now too, because hey, there is this next shiny thing, and there will be another one too, by the way, and there's AI. There is no patience and no possibility to wait any longer than just get a large consultancy and push through the change. Whenever such change fails, we say in sociology, social capital goes down. And the change competence or capacity of people in an organization is dependent upon the level of the social capital. So, you see a lot of people cynically saying, all right, they call us now this team, and they reformed us in this format, and now they call it platform. And this is obviously not the environment where what Hedy was talking about. And so I'd be careful about how we name things. And I would rather love to name a team. I mean, first of all, they decide what their name wants to be, right? With a Bumblebee team or whatever. But usually I would rather assign them or relate them to the product, the service, what they are
Mhm.
offering, what they're after, what the identity is all about.
Great. One more question regarding the glue keeping teams together. We've been talking about trust, and we are implicitly talking about, let's say, more loosely coupled teams with some kind of identity, though. It could be the product, it could be belonging to a mission. Do you see any value in terms of core values that, even without strict rules and processes, would motivate this new kind of teams to stay together, to learn together, to create together into a much broader, and if you want, more confused organizations, just a platform organization. So in a traditional organization, you're going to be assigned to that box, you're going to stay there forever. Maybe you're not happy and motivated, but it's clear. But when everything is in flux and you have many possibilities and a bit of uncertainty, what is keeping people together, engaged, aligned? Is there any, I would say, soft, even if that's not less powerful, let's say, lever that you would envision in terms of values? Who wants
Who
to
wants
go?
to
Okay,
start?
Heidi.
Mm.
In terms of motivation, in terms of belonging, in terms of growth, in
So,
terms of
yeah. So, in terms of belonging and motivation, my experience is that as long as a bunch of people manages to create some output and even better outcome that impacts somebody somehow, and gets feedback that they actually produce something that is relevant to other people or to the market. I think that adds a lot to motivation. If it helps in the long term to keep the people glued together, I don't know, but I think it's a very it's a key element in any team or group constellation. And having the same idea of and the same goal, but I mean that is from team research is necessary in order to create some results and outputs.
so no money. Money is not part of the picture. Uh,
I
getting,
haven't said that.
but you
You
didn't mention it either. So, and I must say, the word of micro enterprises is yes, looking at the impact and products, but if in the while we can get some upsides from what we do, well, we are happy. I don't
I mean,
see
there are
that
all,
much from
all
the agile
kinds of
space.
open source projects that work without money. I think you need, like, probably everybody, like most of us, need a job that pays the bills. And in terms of global insecurity, security probably also is one aspect that you can be sure that it pays the bills also next year. Um, but I guess that's the hygiene factors.
Mhm.
Without them, it's probably hard to start something that runs on the long term. Yeah.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of studies out there which we can look at that let us understand why people join or stay at companies, right? So if you look at Gallup reports, different report statistics and everything. We obviously know that people, or a lot of people, want to see opportunity to learn and grow. So I think that is something to, what you just said, being part of something, having ownership, but also being able to develop yourself into a certain direction. Now we talk a lot about new technologies and opportunities. So there is something. And obviously, since the pandemic latest by, I think balance is also a huge value most people want to look after. Like balance in terms of how much time do I spend in a business or in a team or whatever, or do I have an opportunity to work remote from wherever, or just spend half a year to pursue a private project, whatever it is. And I see a lot of dynamics coming up here. If we just think about AI, what it will change in the job world, also in the knowledge world. And today, OpenAI just announced the next stage of their large language models. It's still large language models. They become more intelligent, more intelligent. They're becoming now critical thinking and everything. And obviously, the new model is now taking over more programming tasks at a higher capacity. So just look at the newspapers today. Um, we will probably, get a lot of redundancy in a lot of jobs. And so a lot of people will maybe not only focus on a career in a platform organization or an organization as such, but maybe combine it with a personal brand development and then just play a temporary role in organization A, B, or C, or product development team A, B, or C. So what that means as a consequence, I think organizations, especially senior leaders and HR departments, need to rethink their traditional ways of how they handle all these terms like resources, assets. I don't like these terms, right? People are people, they're not assets, and they're not on your balance sheet for a good reason. How you basically steer a platform for collaboration, but you might just go for a temporary time. What is important for people, and see how you can underline this thing with data, because there's a lot of research out there.
Great. So let me ask you the last question, then we will go in closure. What are your recommendations for this journey? So if you had to consult with a company or with a team willing to embrace these new dynamics, these new aspects, to engage their people, to work in a different way, to take more responsibility, to be more transparent, to give trust, where would you start? What would be your shopping list? Hedy and then Mike.
Christmas is coming closer.
um, well, so the outlook, Mike, that you just draw about people coming in, coming out. I'm not so sure, because I still am very convinced that we humans are very social, and that we need also the social, how do you say, binds, like the connections, the social connections, to actually be happy and be well. So in my wish list, really would be to put the people into the center, and to acknowledge their needs and their basic needs, and to also bring in this long-term vision, and not only focus on financial numbers, but also bring in values like environment, also community needs that are around. So create a bigger picture of what a company stands for, and what a company, who are the stakeholders of the company, and who is the company working for. Not only the numbers, but also the people that are working and forming the company, the environment, the community the company is settled in. That's my wish list.
Human centricity, yeah. Mike, what else?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree, Hedy, with what you just said about social. I was just pointing to a more flexible approach, which is more owned by people and not by organizations. Like, I spent 10 years at a German automotive group. And when I was there, it was like totally normal that whole families through decades would spend their whole careers in this organization.
Mm.
Nearly impossible to switch companies. And that's nice. It's beautiful. Points us to the past century somehow. And I still see it on old movies. But I don't think this is the future because people are way more flexible to build global bonds, way more flexibly themselves, becoming entrepreneurs. We talk about social platforms and everything alike. So it's not a contradiction, I would say. But my wish list, actually, 4 points. I would always think about culture first. I mean, do we currently have the culture that supports entrepreneurial thinking?
Mm.
So we need to have a clear assessment, I believe, that puts that on the spot. Number two, the biggest influence on culture, no matter how much self-organization we want to look after, is still leadership. Do we have the leadership that is supporting a potential culture shift? And again, now senior leaders, executives are invited to confront themselves, not just downloading a platform, concept and trying to run another transformation, but really to say, okay, how are we going to support that? Number three, from there, are we able to think product? I think that is even a key because large organizations not automatically have the idea of zero distance to customers. There's a lot of internal overhead in most organizations, more than 50%. Are we ready to shift? Are we ready to do that? And number four, if we want to, do we have the processes
Mhm.
in order to just get started? Or if we just start next week, will it be good intent, but after 1 kilometer, the whole teams will be blocked and have to wait for a year? This is my wish list. I wish for everyone who wants to start that.
Thank you so much to both of you. I think my takeaway from this session is that, of course, there is a strong tie between the system and the team, between leadership and team dynamics. We cannot ignore that, and we have to work on the two levels at the same time. When we think about teams, we talked about more transparency, more trust, in a way about more self-managed and flatter teams, but with specific roles. So we also want to have clarity, and we also would like to have some kind of glue, some kind of motivation, inspiration that is not only money. Heidi was talking about making an impact, generating outcomes, and in all of that, what I felt is also a bit of I don't know if saying fear or struggle for individuals that are somehow invited to take on more responsibility. We don't know if this is for everybody, but for sure, this is now a possibility. Mike was pointing to having multiple careers, to having multiple initiatives. I tend to agree. I see more optionality, not only within organizations, but also in our own careers, in our own development. But I like to conclude with what Hedy said. At the end, we want to look at humans as humans. We want to look at the social sphere. We want to see at what makes us thrive, and probably this is the starting point of any transformation. I don't want even to say change management approach. I just want to talk about an evolution, and probably this evolution will take if we bring our humanity, our ingenuity within that. And probably my last takeaway is that there is so much still to build. We don't know, to be sincere. So all of this is pretty new. Platform organizations are new. Applying some concepts from agile to platform organizations is new, and probably there is not one size fits all. What Mike said multiple times. So we need to be flexible and to embrace this richness. I don't want to say diversity, but richness into this journey. I will stop here and really thank you for your availability, your sharing your ideas and experience, and we'll pass the ball to Shruti for the
Yeah.
conclusion.
I mean, same. Firstly, thank you, Hedy and Mike, for joining us. And of course, to the listeners as well, thank you so much. It was really great having such an open discussion. And I think, similar to Emmanuel as well, my takeaways were similar. I particularly like the points on social capital and the possibility for personal brand development sort of playing in all of this, right? And more so in the future. So, for me, those were two really interesting points to take away. Thank you. And before we close, I just wanted to take a minute to also highlight, as I mentioned earlier, Boundaryless is conducting a 16-hour online training program on the Hires Rent and High organizational model, where you'll be taught from the basics to the advanced concepts and how to sort of practically approach this for adopting it into your organization. And we do believe that this will support your entrepreneurial strategy journey across multiple industries, right? So the course is taking place towards the end of November, and the pre-registration links are shared in the comment section of this webinar, so we do hope that you can check it out. And for today, thank you so much. This was the last episode of our Summer of Platform Organizations webinar series. So, thank you all of you for joining. We hope that you gained something from your time with us. And thank you again. The entire webinar will be online in all our media platforms like LinkedIn, YouTube, Medium, and so on, along with the keynotes and links to our guests' profiles as well. So, do keep out an eye for it. And thank you again. During this time, remember to think boundaryless. Bye.